we have 11-time Olympic medalist Allyson Felix in the building. Congratulations are in order, Allyson, because your alma mater, USC, named their field after you, which is huge news. And I saw you talked about as a little girl that you used to take walks on campus with your grandmother and your older brother, who went on to graduate from USC as well. So, how did you find out the news that you were going to have a whole field named after you?
Yes, it was pretty crazy. I mean, it's something that I never would have dreamt of. I mean, I've been around that campus for the majority of my life. Like you said, my grandma, we lived not far from USC and grew up in that area. And so there's a rose garden that's right near, the school. And so we would cut through the university and she would take us there. There's all these like children's museums in that area. So I just grew up going kind of in and out of the campus. And so never in my wildest dreams would I have thought that, eventually one day it would be named after me. I found out I was actually the commencement speaker at USC, and the president called me and she told me, and I was just blown away. I was like, are you sure? Like me? Like, is everyone like approved of this? And, but she really shared that she wanted, instead of like taking money from a donor, they wanted the students to learn about my story and to really place integrity and character as something to, aspire to. And so to me, that was it just meant so much to me. And it's such a huge honor. I'm so, so humbled.
That's crazy. Yeah, because normally those things are for whoever donates the largest amount. You get buildings or fields named after you.
Exactly.
Unbelievable. At your USC commencement speech, you mentioned that, and you said there are times you'll have to ask for change, and then there are times where you'll have to create it. Now, after going head to head with Nike, you founded Seish, a community-driven lifestyle brand. And so I'm just curious because you talked about like, okay, your USC days and all things track and field. We know that you're a star, but then you got your little entrepreneur on and started to build a brand where you was breaking into the clothing and shoe industry. So like, what is that like?
Again, something I never would have dreamt of. But it just really came about organically. I was in this this really difficult battle with Nike over maternity protections, and I ended up parting ways with them over that. And at the time, I was preparing for my fifth and final Olympic Games, and I knew that I could make it there. I really believed in that, but I didn't have shoes to wear. So I thought it was crazy. I was like, I'm a runner and I don't have a shoe sponsor. Like, that's absurd. And so I was having this conversation with my brother where I was really just like venting about everything and was just like, I just can't believe that I'm here right now. And I'm just so tired of like begging companies to see my value and to see my worth. And I don't want to do it anymore. And he was like, well, we should do it ourselves. And I'm like, create a company. So it was something that I had a lot of doubts about, wasn't confident. And then the more that I thought with it, that was where that idea came with. It's like, no, I'm asking for all these change from all these different places. Here we can create change. We can be that representation. We can do things differently. But it was a lot of learning and a lot of understanding that a lot of lessons that I learned in sport were still valid and still relevant to what I was doing in business.
Oh, I love that. And so you took on Nike. Like, first of all, that's a wild thing to just say. Like, you took on Nike. That's like one of the biggest brand companies that you could possibly do. And now basically you want to end the maternal health crisis. And you said women lived in a culture of fear and silence. They hid their pregnancies to protect their careers. And that's a previous quote from you. And I don't know if you saw, but recently there was a WNBA player who expressed her feelings of discrimination by her former team for being pregnant. So I'm curious, like, in what ways are you changing that? And what words do you have for athletes that are facing that struggle? Because this is a thing that men's sports don't really have any type of understanding of, to be able to, because we see all the time that, NFL player's wife might be pregnant during the Super Bowl, or we've seen commentators run off of set because their wife, but it's different when you're actually having the baby.
It's so hard. I mean, for me, I always felt like, okay, I have to do everything first before like I explore motherhood. And I hate that is like the feeling. And I think there was a lot of, at least in track and field, there was a lot of struggle for women who who became mothers while they were still competing. It was never like this celebrated thing at that time. It was always like, okay, how am I going to juggle this? Or in track and field, there was like this culture of silence where, if you didn't have a contract, you would hide your pregnancy, you would secure a new contract. And so all of these really hard things. And when I went through it, I was just like, my eyes were open. It's like, this is wild that it's been this way for so long. And so now, after the maternity protections and after, companies changing their policies and stepping up, it was like, what ways can we better support women so that they don't have to choose between the profession and their passion that they love and motherhood? So whether it's things like what we fought for this past season was childcare at events, and just really breaking down those barriers to be able to stay in the support, creating grants to be able to help, women travel and bring the support along that they need. I was really inspired by the WNBA's agreement, and all of the amazing, things that are in place for families. And so it's just the idea that this should be standard, and finding new ways to support and just make things easier.
It's interesting because in track and field, we talk about a lot of the struggles of women's sports in general. And in track and field, I don't even necessarily know if it's a woman's struggle or it's the difference of, by the way, talking to your brother and you, people don't know, but we're family now at this point.
We're cousins.
Wes was talking about how it's so different when you go pro from track and field because the resources aren't there. And so I think that there's a relatability thing that can happen when it comes to women's sports and track and field. But can you just talk about how once in track and field, once you go pro, how you have to be your own everything or find your own everything? Can you elaborate on that for people that may not understand?
Yeah, it can be a struggle in track and field because for most athletes, you're coming from college, and in college, everything is set up for you, right? Like, where your meals are coming from, your medical staff, your trainers, your coaches, everything. But as a professional track and field athlete, you become a professional and then you have to put together your team. And so you have to find a coach, you have to find a chiropractor, massage therapist, you have to find a management team, like all of these things you have to put into place. And so I always tell, people who are wanting to be a professional, it's really about the circle that you have around you. You have to be able to trust, in them and to be able to create that team. And it's really hard because there's such a big disparity in pay from the top to, middle tier of professional athletes, and to be able to put that support system together, because not only are you putting it together, like it's now your responsibility to pay all of these people as well. So it can be a big challenge. Yeah.
That's why, well, I mean, obviously you did a great job putting your team together because you earned the most Olympic medals of any track athlete in U.S. history. Like that, I want to say this again because that is wild, Allyson. You earned the most Olympic medals of any track athlete in U.S. history, and also earned the title for the most decorated athlete at the World Championships. So we know that LeBron James broke the great Hakeem Abdul-Jabbar's record for the all-time scoring record, but you broke a legend's record as well, Carl Lewis's. So since you've been through something similar, what emotions do you think LeBron James is going through right now? And did Carl Lewis reach out to you when you passed him? Like, tell me about that moment for you.
For me, it was never something that I set out to do. So it was never like, okay, I want to win a gold medal. I want to become the most decorated. Like, I didn't even know it was a thing. I remember, I think when I was getting close, they were telling me like the stats, and I was like, you guys keep those stats? Like, I didn't even know that was like a thing. So it was kind of this amazing moment that I didn't have my eyes on. And Carl did reach out. It was really special. What? And I think the biggest thing is like, we all want to see our sport at the highest light. We want to see it continue to move forward. And I think that's just a part of it. Each generation, you want to push them higher, and we have more.
But what did he say, Allyson? We have to know. This is the great Carl Lewis. What did he say?
He tweeted something. I have to go back and remember what it was, but it was all love. It was all positive. He's been just so incredible of a support system, and just great, and just like literally, it's Carl Lewis. Like, he paved the way. So it was like what even to be in the same breath, as him, like, is incredible. So I don't remember exactly what it is. I'm going to have to go back and look at that tweet, but it was really special, and obviously something that I hold dear to me.
Love that. And so at 19, while you were in college competing against gold medalists like Veronica Campbell and winning, by the way, we previously had the director of Love and Basketball come on. And so you were an athlete at USC. Now, the movie Love and Basketball, did it hit a little different for you? Like, you already know where I'm going
Man,
with this. Come
it
on, did
is.
it hit different for y'all? Because y'all are USC.
Yes. I mean, it's iconic. Like, it's one of my favorite movies. And me and my husband, we're always talking about it. We're like, oh, we have to, maybe for Halloween this year, we're like, we have to go on campus and like recreate that. And so, yeah. And even like seeing the movie, like they used the actual track there. I remember when they were like doing some conditioning and running around. So it was so special. Anything that's shot in your hometown too is
Right.
always really fun. But yeah, that it definitely hit different.
Well, y'all have a phenom in Juju Watkins who's going to USC
Yes,
next year. You've heard about her.
absolutely.
She's pretty much probably going to be the real life version of Love and Basketball on UNC's campus. So that'll be something to look out for. Now, you said a quote that I'm by nature a more reserved, shy person. I don't usually want to rock the boat. But it was my brother, Wes, who's my brother now, who said, you know, you can use your voice even if it shakes. Can you just talk about that? Because at that point, I mean, everyone, like we've already talked about this together, but no one really sets out to be an activist. It's not like something you put on your
Hmm.
accomplishments list, to do list, but throughout all of your career now and what you've been fighting for, whether it comes from for maternity rights or other things, now you are an activist. And so can you just talk about like what that was to step outside of that, follow, because we're the same. We know that like usually we like to follow along and
Yeah.
be pretty much good soldiers and do what you're supposed to do. But
Hmm.
what was that moment like where you had to just break out of it?
For me, it was so just outside, like you're saying, it was outside of my nature. I was just always, okay, like, what is my job? A, B, and C. Let me do that. Let me not ruffle any feathers. I just want to be the best partner that I can be, you know, in all the different ways. And so when I went through this, you know, very real life experience and realized that, you know, I felt like I needed to share it. Um, I was terrified to do that. You know, I was terrified by so many different things and just scared what would the response be and who am I going to upset and what does this mean for my future and my family's future and so all of those things. And when I was going through that, you know, my brother was sharing with me that, you know, you can use your voice even if it shakes, meaning you can go forward, you can do really scary things, and you don't have to be fully confident in yourself. And I think that that was really the game changing moment for me. It was like, okay, all right, I know this is hard. I know that I'm scared, but I know that I can still do it. And then once I did it, there was like this sense of freedom on the other side of it. It was like, okay, that wasn't as bad as I thought. Like, all right, so then I can, you know, I can talk about other things. I just talked about the experience I went through giving birth to my daughter, and now, you know, really being passionate fighting against the maternal mortality crisis that's facing Black women. And so it was just kind of like I needed to kind of put myself out there and be vulnerable. And then what came from that was change and finding my voice, really.
Man, no, I feel you on that. And you brought up your daughter, and a lot of the things that you started to fight for, it was real life experience. You have a daughter now. You were going through maternity and had to figure out, okay, I don't have a shoe company. I need to figure it out. Now, there were a lot of people, and this is the thing I think about athletes, that people don't recognize. They recognize it, but I always like to highlight it because you basically had everyone telling you that there's no way after a kid you're going to get back to the top level. Like, you know, it was almost assumed that once you have a child, all of that is over. Now we've seen the working mom and the struggles of that, whereas even if it's a mom that's not being an athlete mom, there's still the struggles to be a working mom. So what was your mindset? What was your, I would just say, determination on that? Like, what was that even like, getting back in shape after pregnancy too? Because after having a baby, because I know that for me, I never even liked to get out of shape. Like, I wanted to make sure that
Mm-hmm.
I stayed in the top shape, because that getting back in shape feeling is the
It's the
worst. So
worst, the
it's
worst.
the worst. So what was that journey like just to get back to the Olympics?
Man, it was super humbling. It was like, you know, in my head, I'm a planner. Like I have everything laid out, you know, like most athletes do. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to have this baby in 4 weeks. I'm going to be back training. Like it's going to be great. And then everything went south and, you know, I had emergency C-section. We were in the hospital for a long time and it was just, nothing was going according to this plan. And so it was super just humbling. It was like things that once came really easy to me were now really challenging. And I started to doubt myself and started to like listen to the people around me, hearing the murmurs, and just was like, well, maybe they're right, But I think for me, when somebody tells me like that I can't do something, that's when it's like, oh, it's on. Like, that's all I need to hear. And it's like,
Facts.
I took that like personally, that, that people were saying I was too old, being a mom, I wasn't going to be able to make it back. There's too much talent in the US, and there's no way I was going to be able to get back to make another team. And so it was just that motivation of saying like, no, I can do this. And then after going through all of the, splitting ways with Nike and creating Sage, it was like this added, thing of really wanting to be that representation to anybody, especially to women though. Like when someone tells us we can't do something, like not only can we do it, but we can do it in such a way that is graceful and people take notice and creates change. And so I think that was like the drive was just crazy to get back there.
No, I feel you. It makes me think about how now there's a discussion online. So there's a player at LSU, I believe her name is Angel Reese, and then there's Shakari Richard. Is it Richardson? Shakari Richardson?
Mm-hmm.
But basically, there's bold personalities now in women's sports, and a lot of people are starting to get used to that. What are your thoughts? Because somebody tweeted out that we need more energy and attitude and personalities in women's sports. We shouldn't shy away from it anymore. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree. I mean, I think everyone should be their authentic self. They should be unapologetic. And if that is the personality, if that's who you are, then be who you are. Embrace it. And I think that everybody else, I think it is good for the sport. I think we need different personalities, and, everyone, there are so many differences between us. And I think it's exciting for the game. It's exciting for the fans, and it brings, that energy. And so I don't think we should shy away from it. I think we should welcome it. And more than anything, I just think we all should be our true selves.
Do you feel like you were branded in your true self, or were you in a mold that they wanted you to be almost? Did you feel like you got to be your authentic self as you were being branded by other companies signed to Nike or whoever it may be?
I think it was really hard for me because I think for a long time, like I felt like I had to fit into this perfect box. I shared, being a people pleaser and wanting to like be the best representation and feeling like the only way I could do it was to do things perfectly. And so I think that was really challenging for me for a long, long time. And it wasn't until I got to the end of my career where I was like, no, I'm going to be myself and I'm going to be unapologetic about that. And I hope that other athletes like don't experience that, because I think it's great to, obviously to be a good role model and to do all those things. But I think at some point it can feel heavy, it can feel like I can't have one mistake because everything is going to come crumbling. And I think for a lot of my career, I felt that pressure of, living up to those expectations, which are really unrealistic. It's like, I became a professional at 17 years old. Like,
first of all, that's ridiculous, Allyson. What?
It's like a lot of growing pains throughout that. And so I just think like we have to realize like athletes are just like everyone else. We have the same issues as everyone else, and give space to grow.
No, you bring up a good point. You have a podcast with your brother. Athletes have their own platforms at this point. We see athletes like talking to the media directly, and then the world of name, image, and likeness. I'm just curious because you went to USC, you were a star athlete. What kind of endorsement deals would you like? What would have the world of name, image, and likeness looked at like for you had you still had it been? Because you know what I'm asking you, it's like that would have been a crazy thing. People say it to me all the time, like I went to UConn, and what would that world have been like? But what are your thoughts on NIL now and in the college space?
Yeah, I mean, I'm so happy for the athletes now, because obviously we all know like this is a long time coming, like should have been around forever. And I think it's great. I think obviously it's new, so we're still, figuring everything out. It's a bit of the wild, wild west, but I'm so excited that athletes can now, benefit from that, because the schools are benefiting, the coaches are benefiting. It's only right that, the athletes do the same. So I hope that it continues to grow. And I hope that the opportunities are really out there.
Love that. Okay, so you're a mom. You're an AKA?
Recently, yes.
Come on with it. Okay. What was that? Don't be look, you are shy. This is hilarious because I think people will be surprised to see how powerful you are and then you are shy. But talk about that. Like, I mean, my sister's an AKA, but I saw that you were with a powerful group of AKAs recently on Founders Day.
Yes, I mean, it was the most fun. I mean, I've always wanted to be in a sorority. Like ever since I was younger, I was like, oh, I want to go to HBCU. I want to do this and that. And then obviously like with sports, it like consumes your life and you're like,
Same.
You can't do any of the things, right? So it was like this thing that always, I was like, oh, I wish that I could have done that. And so to become an honorary member and like just really be embraced into the sisterhood was so incredible. And just learning more about the service, that's really what just really spoke to me. It was like, okay, this is not just about, ourselves. This is about the community. This is about helping other people. And so it was just so much fun. The ceremony was beautiful, amazing line sisters. And yeah, it was just a lot of fun.
Who's your line sisters?
The incredible Patti LaBelle.
Thank you, because she just gonna just drop like amazing line sisters. Who are the line sisters? Patti
Erica
LaBelle.
Campbell. Yes, we had a congresswoman. It was just really special to be a part of that group and to be, brought in together.
And you got your ski weed together?
I'm still working, with my sores on that.
So you're not gonna give us one time for the one time?
I won't do it right now, but we know with my sisters.
Okay, I'm just checking. All right, so like I was saying, you're a mom, you're an AKA, an activist, which is a title that we talked about is given to you. You don't necessarily set out to do. You're an entrepreneur, the most decorated athlete and track and field athlete. What's next? Like what category, what part, what industry do you want to tackle now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just loving what I'm doing now. I mean, growing Seish is just really been fulfilling that kind of competitive edge for me. So I'm really excited with that. My brother and I are launching our venture fund, Crenshaw Ventures. And so I'm really excited about that. Just going through the process of raising capital for my company, just we all know the statistics and how hard it is for women and even harder for women of color. And so wanting to create a space where we provide that funding and we hear and listen and support underserved founders. So I'm really excited about that as well. So, and continuing to advocate for women, pushing for childcare and sport, just trying to make things easier for mom athletes as well.
Facts. Well, Allyson, thank you so much for joining us here on Montgomery and Company. We're going to be looking at on all those things. Seish is out there. Where can they find Seish if they wanted to get some sneakers, if they wanted to follow around? It's a lifestyle brand. So how can they follow along on the journey?
Absolutely. You can find us at seish.com. It's just SAYSH.com. And on Instagram, we're by Seish. And you can find us in Foot Locker, at Kith.
Come on with it.
Especially with the Athleta, yes.
Come on. Thank you, Allyson. Awesome. Well, thank you. The legend, the 11-time medalist, the most decorated athlete. And I want to say this again, the most Olympic medals of any track athlete in the U.S. Allyson Felix, thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me.